Hey everybody, welcome to the MSP Growth Kit sales webinar with Nate Austin and Steve Riot. We took a month off. Feel like I barely even know you guys, and sometime in the last 60 days, you guys aligned on pink shirts.
You can fix that up.
We're a little disappointed in your execution there, Brad.
Yeah. Well, out of the loop, but here's the exciting news that we learned just before the start of this webinar. We are close to 100 subscribers. So here's the deal. We need you to smash the I'm going early. You need to smash the subscribe button because we got a little commitment from Nate and Steve. They're gonna wear a get along shirt as soon as we make a video. As soon as we hit 100 subscribers, we only need 4 more, and I think I could be one of them because I'm pretty sure I am not subscribed. So that would get us that way. I think we only need 3 more. And Stephanie, I don't know if we could throw up a picture of the get along shirt, but you can picture a big t-shirt with both of their heads coming out the same neck hole. And I don't know what the arms look like, but it will be sufficiently embarrassing. And I think Stephanie also added, not only will it be those guys in a get along shirt, but it will be a debut of a new TikTok video that you guys are looking to debut.
I think it was a dance, Brad.
Yeah. What did I say? Video?
Video.
Yeah, a TikTok dance, which again, I'm 100. I don't even know what that means. But it's gonna happen if we get 3 more subscribers than me. Okay. Let's get a little more serious. Okay, this is part 2. We talked account management and sales stuff last time. And
there it is.
Right,
Brad, if you're looking at the screen, it's
there it is. That's the get along shirt. We will see that only, like, in my mind, the cartoon bubble I have in my head, because this is sort of becoming a thing, is Nate, Steve's been self-detrimentally kind of like making fun of himself as being a little diminutive, a little shorter. Steve, how tall are you?
Did you just call me a minion?
Diminutive.
I heard minion.
Sorry, it's kind of
the shoe fits
for a sales guy. What? How tall are you? Do you mind sharing, Steve? How tall are you?
With my shoes.
Okay.
I will make the 5'8" side.
Okay, 5'8". Nate, how tall are you?
I'm stretching to 5'10". So, but like that's without my shoes. So I don't know. I'm
okay. We got 2 or 3
where Steve's at.
Again, the cartoon bubble I have in my head is Ernie and Bert sticking out of that that shirt. Steve,
well,
I think
it's really accurate because one of the 2 of us is a little more pasty than the other.
Yeah, Steve, I think we just need to get a little bit more kind of gel in your eyebrows, make them just a little bit more, and you got everything ready to go. Right?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, let's get serious because people want to grow, right? And we're here talking sales because it's the seems like always present challenge. Let's talk KPI. So account management. You want the right behaviors to drive the right KPIs to get them paid, and hopefully the payment is a comp plan that works within your overall kind of sales goals and targets, right? Like there's a hierarchy to the logic behind all of this. So let's talk about behaviors and KPIs that you want to do, and I would imagine getting it right between driving the right behaviors without overcompensating and driving behaviors that like kind of don't necessarily feed what you want to do as part of the challenge. But Nate, I'll start with you. What are some of your kind of key KPIs and what behaviors are you looking to do?
Yeah, and I feel as an extension of our last session where we really talked about the key behaviors to drive that, but then being very specific about the goals. And I found that even when I've had different conversations like this with other MSPs, and again, everyone has the ability and the freedom and liberty to figure this out and to interpret it the way they feel fits their business best. But I feel sometimes where the misses is that just having a role. I've seen a lot of MSPs when they're first starting this journey not define KPIs, or the KPIs they define are like put together a quarterly review, but not actually execute it, not have any revenue targets around it. Those kind of, like, it's more of a customer service. And I'm not I'm not trying to poke at a title. I care less about what you call it, the role. It's more about what does the role do. And I feel like I've seen too many times where like it's just this customer service catch-all that doesn't actually drive alignment of your clients to your stack, doesn't actually drive revenue in the organization. And so like you're missing, I think, a huge opportunity, which is why we wanted to be in this session, be really prescriptive about what those KPIs are. So for us, we have landed on, and folks who have heard us speak before know that this is something we figured out about 6-ish years ago, is our primary KPI is you need to do 100% of your quarterly reviews every quarter. Like that's one of the key drivers for us. Even to be eligible for a quarterly bonus for an account manager from us is you have to do at least 90% of them. So that's kind of a minimum expectation is 90% execution, but we give it a little extra bump if you do 100%. And we actually track, we have using a tool, kind of a QBR tool, we track that and the meetings and who attended at a client level. And then the second one that we look at is, and this is the most important one from a revenue perspective, is because the first one drives the other two, is 20% professional services pull through. And what we found is on a quarterly basis. So like an example of that is we have $100,000 of MRR. Again, and for us, again, to be clear about MRR, that's managed services, not like recurring product. I'm not talking about Azure or 365 billing. That's also MRR, but that's not managed services. So
Right.
your managed services book of business is $100,000 a month that you're managing as an account manager. $20,000 a month, or for us, we measure it $60,000 on the quarter, is the professional services pull-through expectation. So we have if you hit 20% pull through, that's 100% of your goal. You're eligible for that part of the bonus. And then if you hit, but the minimum expectation, I think this is also an important KPI to define, is the minimum expectation is 75% of that. So if you're doing less than 75% of that pull through, you're going on a performance improvement plan. That's going to be part of the deal. And we're going to talk about that later. But so that's the second major KPI for us. And then the third one is one-time product gross margin. Organizationally, we do budget a top-line revenue number for product, but we really don't care about that. We should be making the right recommendations for the clients. And so I care less how much revenue you sell of product, one-time product, but I care that you sell at a good gross margin. So for us is 22% or more for one-time product gross margin. So those are the three main KPIs for our account management team.
Do you see them trying to game the professional services pull through? Like, I hit my quota already, so I'm gonna like push this one back, or does the quarterly measurement take care of that enough?
I think it's an excellent question, Brad, because that was one of the big mistakes we made when we first defined our plan to this threshold, is that we had only set quarterly goals and we didn't set an annual goal. And you made a comment in the introduction, other than smash the subscribe. Okay, still do that. But you made a comment in the beginning, which is it needs to be aligned with your business goals, right? So one of the things that we as a business do is we target and forecast an annual number that we want to hit. But then when we broke down the comp plans and KPIs, we only gave our team quarterly goals, not an annual goal. Now, in theory, you add up the 4 quarters, that should give you an annual, but there was zero incentive for the team if they hit their annual goal. There's only incentive if they hit their quarterly. So what we've done is we actually there's a quarterly goal expectation, and that if two things, there's an annual goal, so that if they hit their annual goal, they get a little extra. But also if let's say in one of those quarters they got north of their 75%, the 75% target of the pull through, but they missed their 100%. Well, so they're going to make less. They're going to get some bonus, but less. And then if they hit their annual goal, even if they missed a previous quarter's total goal, they can make back half of what they missed in a previous quarter. So like we gave them that opportunity. So we still want our sales team, even if they hit their goal in a quarter, to keep pushing, because it can still contribute to their annual goal. And even if they missed a goal, we still want them hustling, because they could still hit their annual goal across the course of the year. So that's really again, is it perfect? No, but it solved the problem of making sure the team had an annual objective and behavioral goal, which our businesses do too.
Yeah. Do you have to go upside? Like, what if they hit 100%, 50% of an annual goal? Like, is there an upside clip that they can make some more money?
We actually have thresholds where they get an extra bonus on an annual basis if they hit 110, 115, 120, and 125% of goal.
Yeah.
So we have those extra bumps that they get if they do stretch, because we also don't want them to, let's say if they had a great year and they hit their goal in September or October, to be like, I'm done for the year. So we want them to keep pushing and keep, because time kills deals for clients too. And so we do want them to have a stretch goal opportunity as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve, what do you do relative to what Nate described?
Yeah, honestly, I think what I'm going to do is cover, like I would say 80%, I would agree entirely with what Nate does. And if anything, there's some language differences, which you might find in a lot of these things, but I'll probably cover the 20% where Nate came up short. And what?
See what he did there?
Yeah.
See what he did there, everybody?
Yeah. Yeah.
So first of all, I think a lot of this is language. Like, for example, we do quarterly reviews on performance, much like Nate spoke about. We have an annual target goal too. The one difference that we have that I know Nate and I have compared and contrasted is we have variable bases based on previous year performance. So if you don't hit your annual goal, you can go backwards a base or forwards a base. But we do not do automatic raises or anything like that. So it's based on your previous year's performance. So you have a direct tie to your annual. And so kind of to your point, Brad, where you're talking about, hitting annual versus quarterly, like there's a big reason to hit your annual, but also kind of our rule is if you don't hit 2 quarters in a row, like you're on a performance improvement plan. And I think we might talk about that a little bit later, but that's one of it. What are the metrics we measure? We measure margin, which is ultimately tied to all the things Nate talked about. Like we have predefined processes where sales can and cannot change margins. Therefore, we're measuring the same thing. We're just maybe calling them a little bit different thing for salespeople. Yeah. I love Nate's ability to add those bumps of plus over the 100%. Our systems really don't give us the ability to track that. And probably the biggest problem that we have that, like you talked about gaming the system, Brad. Yes, a salesperson will game the system anytime, anywhere. Like I would almost be concerned about them if they weren't trying, because we almost encourage them like to play a game of making more money. So why wouldn't they game the system?
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't violate some integrity, right?
Totally.
Right? You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
A salesperson managing their book of business, knowing of the quarterly thresholds, I'm totally good with that. If they're planning out and managing the interaction with their clients, good. But don't do this. This is the only. Forgive me, Steve, for jumping in. But like if a client signs on June 28th, which was the last Friday of this last June, and then they record it July 1, that's a big no-no. Yep. Right. So we actually have it specifically defined that the win date of an opportunity is the date the client signs, because if they don't do that, then it's an integrity issue, and we're going to have a different conversation. Sorry, Steve.
And so that, again, you talk about language. So one of the things we pay and recognize upon build. And so one of the things that we found, you talk about gaming system. Well, guess what? They're having a good quarter. So then what they try to do is work with project management or the tech team or whatever it is to try to get this build this month when it may not be the right thing for the customer. I mean, I appreciate the wanting to get built because I want it built too. But right, like the process is a process. So we measure 2 KPIs relevant to this. We measure signed, and transparently that's measured in ConnectWise. And then we measure build that comes through accounting. Build is what they get compensated on, not what's signed.
So let me ask you, forgive me, do you pay a percentage of what's billed to account managers?
Remember, we have hybrids.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot
about
that. Yep.
Yeah, like no distinction there for us. So but again, it only gets paid upon build. Yep. And so, and of course, if the customer wouldn't pay their bill, it'd be, penalties backwards on that if there was something on that. But the reason being is, unfortunately, the gap between signed and build, depending on size of project and whatnot, can be large, right? I mean, if you're doing a multi-$100,000 install, it could take and where products at and all that other stuff. So some, again, I talk about language, like these are like intricacies between Nate and I's company, and I think this is where you have to apply your own company stuff. But I think what you heard is you're ultimately measuring revenue. And then we use the CSAT scores relevant to customer service. And so sales reps are responsible for that, meaning, some portions of it, I should say. How about that? We measured across all the different reps, and there could be a tie between a poor technical performance and a poor sales rep, meaning the same tech does all the installs for the same sales rep. Well, there could be an issue, but typically we're trying to align that. I love your tie to the business reviews. Currently today, I would say we're struggling just a hair. Like, I got a couple reps that aren't doing well, and I kind of like that hook that just says, look, if you don't do the minimums, and I define the minimums, then we're not going to pay you. So I might have just learned something from you today, Nate. So thank you for that one. I'll definitely take it.
These KPIs you guys are talking about, they feel very sort of, I would call them chunky to me, right? Like we're not getting super granular. We're talking, right? Like we're talking quarterly measurements of project work, right? Like, I mean, that's just one fairly big financial number. Do you have more behavioral KPIs? And if so, like, when do those kick in? I'm working towards Steve, I know you've talked previously about your management gets tighter as performance gets worse until you kind of manage them out. And so I'm transitioning more into that part of the conversation. What does that look like for you, Steve?
Well, first of all, there's certain measurements that we will not allow to slip. So all opportunities are measured inside of ConnectWise. We have qualifying KPIs, we have closed KPIs, all of that's measured all the time. And it's not optional for you not to put opportunities in ConnectWise, and or track that inside our systems. And if we find that you're doing that, we will penalize you pretty drastically, right? It's a lot of annual review more or quarterly review, but we could penalize margin or their payments if it became to that point. And then Brad, specifically, you mentioned do I measure all cold calls and number of customer visits and all that stuff on all my reps? No. Do I measure it on my new reps and my struggling reps? Yes. And it's kind of one of these things, if you earn trust and your performance is at or above quota, then I'm not going to micromanage those behaviors. If you're not at that level, then we're going to start having, our catch-up meetings talking about, okay, you're not executing on the basics. Therefore, we're going to be having those level of conversations. And then finally, where this ends, I spoke of, if you're not hitting your targets quarterly, for 2 quarters in a row, this is where we're going to have really detailed conversations as frequently as daily to say, we know, much like Nate specifically said, we know that doing your quarterly business reviews equals revenue. We know the same thing. If you're executing on the number of calls you should be making, the number of quarterly business reviews that you're getting done, if you're executing on your renewals, the basics, we know you'll hit your targets. So we're going to measure on that. But I will say this, we can get to the end of that trail where if they are supposedly executing on all of those items and still not hitting quota, there will be a different conversation, because we will obviously help coach through you're doing your business reviews, but let's talk about your last business review. Let me go with you on a business review. Are they having the right conversations? You said you're doing 100 cold calls a day. I'm going to listen to 50 of them. And, you just picking up the phone and not talking to somebody doesn't count, right? Getting really granular. So I hope I answered that question, Brett.
Yeah. Nate, what do you do to drill in the metrics?
So on a weekly basis, we didn't used to, but I'm a firm believer of leveraging ConnectWise if you're a ConnectWise user for the get the red out methodology, right? And I like to look at the sales dashboard for them, their pipeline and their tickets, and mainly their activities and opportunities first. And I just want to make sure that there's no past due activities, no past open opportunities in the past, because opportunities should never be in the past, always should be in the future. And if it's in the past, it should be won or close, right? And then 2, I'm looking at, do they have a next action, and have they moved their next action forward? Because I do expect my reps to plan their week, definitely the next week. But I also understand that in any given week, if they're one-on-ones on Monday, I'm not going to come to them on a Wednesday. Hey, why do you have some red in your pipeline? Because their week might have gotten derailed by a customer issue or a personal issue or whatever. so the one-on-one is really a critical time to make sure that you're looking at their pipeline to make sure that they are not letting something slip through the cracks, right? So they have a forward-looking activity, they have their pipeline looking to the future, and then they're making sure they're managing it actively. Now, that's a high level. If you're having a performance problem, then you need to dig deeper into those variables and not just trust, because that can be gamed. Someone can just put an activity in the future that's not actually being used. It just gets the red out, but it's not actually something they're working towards. So if they're not hitting the numbers, those are the kind of things to look at. But I also look at some other things. I want account managers to be networking. I want them to get out into the community. So I want a couple times a month. I want them like doing something in the community, going to a Rotary group, going to a BNI group, going to like a chamber event, doing something to get themselves out there. It helps with business acumen. It helps building relationships. It helps build their networking ecosystem so that when our clients ask us to do something that we don't do well, they have referral partners that they can talk to. So that's one of the things. I also have a metric of giving referrals. I want everybody on our team, the outside salespeople, I want doing this more, but minimally give 2 referrals a month. And that could be client to client. That could be vendor to vendor. That could be vendor to client. That could be client to vendor. It could be, I don't really care, but in your ecosystem, I want you giving a couple referrals a month, because what I learned about when I was selling, it took me a while to reverse engineer, like what was some of the things I did that made me successful. Not trying to be arrogant about it, but like I couldn't figure out some of the things that I just naturally did when I was translating it to other members of our team that made me successful. And that was one of the big ones that I gave a ton of referrals. I almost never asked for a referral, but I gave a bunch of them, and that put me in the position to receive. And that was the one thing that it took me a while to figure it out because I'm a little slow, but like that that took me years before I put that as a metric. But that's one of the metrics I have for account managers and for outside salespeople. But those are some of the key behavior ones. And the
Nate,
last thing that I would say,
real quick before you go
yeah,
there, a couple things that I saw that you might have missed in that were just small. And I know you do this, but like on your opportunities, that percent chance of close, because that gives you pipeline, right? I'm looking for, are they all 90%? Right. Like you've been through somebody's pipeline and like every deal's 90 or 95%. So that means they're not actually using the tool appropriately, which screws up our pipeline management. So just a small nugget. The second one is trust but verify, right? Like they say they're doing these activities. I will, if I run into a customer that they know that they should have been having an interaction with, be like, hey, how you saw Nate out, on Tuesday, how did that go? And they're like, who's Nate? I've had that happen, by the way. Like I hate to admit that, like that's happened, but talking about gaming the system on that, Brad, that's one of those items. Yeah. Those are the kind of the 2 items I was thinking. Nate,
well, and Steve, we don't use the percentage close per se, but we do, but in a different way. Okay. We look at it by sales stage. So
that's exactly what we do. Yeah, that's what we do.
So there's milestones in our sales stages where if you've reached this stage, we know as a business that it has an increased probability of closing in the near future, right? So I do look at that though.
I want to clarify why though, right? Like, because some of our audience may not know why. First of all, this is in the sales toolkit, like the stages that Nate's talking about, like it's defined out there. But if you ask a salesperson what stage it's in, it's 95%, like every time. But what Nate's talking about is like, I've had a first meeting, so I think that's like 50% or something. I don't
barely anything,
but like it takes the magic out of that, and so it makes your pipeline a lot more consistent because the sales rep's not making a guess. To Nate's point at this stage, so we are doing exactly the same way. Sorry, I didn't. I came up short explaining that to you, there, Nate.
Did you say that again? Did you do that again? Short jokes all day today. What's this?
I don't know what it is.
He's not even that short. I mean,
I'm a little scared about it.
So, but I agree with you, and I think, and sometimes those stages are different. The stages are the same, but the milestones that you might look at, like for us, the milestones are different for account managers because primarily thing that account managers are selling are projects. And so for us, a main threshold for us where once it hits stage 4, which is when we're basically building and delivering a proposal, once we're to that stage, then I know that we should be getting that business 90+% of the time in the next 60 days, if not sooner. But it's different for outside sales, right? That stage is because we have an assessment that we do that at stage 3, it's actually stage 2, but then it immediately basically goes to stage 2. So once we cross that threshold, that's when we have a 70% probability of close. So it's understand again, for those of you who are just starting this journey, the message I want you to hear is define some of these things. And even if it's loosely defined, like we had those 4 stages defined, or 5, we have 6 stages in our sales cycle. Basically the 6 is the close. So 5 stages effectively. And it's all in the growth kit, which we'll publish, which is already published, and we'll share that. But is we didn't have the criteria in the growth kit. I actually have criteria. We have criteria developed. So like, this is what you need to do to go from stage 1 to stage 2. This is what you need to do to go from stage 2 to stage 3. We actually have it broken down that granularly, but like at first we just had the stages. It was very loosely defined. And that's really, when you're starting this journey, that's really all you're looking at. Like, and you can ask questions of your sales rep. Like so, and I remember having a conversation with a sales rep years ago where they had every single one of their opportunities with the exact same month. That tells me they're not managing their opportunities correctly, right? And because there's no way they're going to close every one of their opportunities. So because they were using their opportunities as their action item. And that's not the way opportunities should be used. Opportunities should be out to the future of when the client is going to make the decision. And so, and then your activity should be the action you need to take to reverse engineer that. So that's the combination of getting the red out. And so, and so the other thing is, like, if you're coming to the end of the month and you have a lot of opportunities that are in stage 1, there's nearly no way, unless it's incorrectly categorized, that stage 1 deals are going to close by the end of the month, because the steps you need to do to make sure you can get a proposal from them and actually sign is highly unlikely, unless they have to move by July 15th and I got to get them this proposal. They got to sign on by Friday or we're not going to get it done. Okay, well then that's the thing that you'd want to hear from your sales rep. So these are the kind of things that you want to poke at, so that it can help your sales rep not have to do a lot of busy work clicking, because if they're managing their pipeline appropriately, you can poke at the stages and ask them questions like, well, why is this at stage 4? And if they can't answer that question, they are not managing their pipeline well. So you can kind of spot check those without having to do that every single time, every single week, on every single opportunity. But those are the things that if you're seeing or feeling that gut feeling of maybe they're not doing the things they should be doing, start poking a little bit at those things. You'll start scratching the surface a little bit, and you'll eventually find out where the miss is and where the gap is, and probably where some training is required or coaching is required.
Now, one thing that I think that Captain ConnectWise on this call should help us with is, you've said a couple times, get the red out. So Captain ConnectWise, what the hell does that mean?
I'm assuming you're talking to me.
That'd be
Yeah,
I'm just missing your cape, Brad. You're just missing your cape.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to talk tool use in general. I think one of the challenges we have in our industry is people collect tools and they don't deploy them in a way where you actually kind of get the juice that you're paying for. Mm-hmm. And these tools, opportunity tracking and tickets, they aren't like spreadsheet lists. You got to use the tool to do some of the work for you. And one of them would be use your dates. And if the dates if something's over a date, it should turn a certain color. So as a manager, you can look, and if there's 99 things on the screen, you don't have to know about all 99. You just need to know about the 2 or 3 that are red. And then those are the ones you drill into, right? It's one of the curve jumping managerial kind of psychological like shifts you have to make, is eventually get big enough where you can't know everything that's going on inside your business. You just got to draw some boundaries and then manage what's falling outside those boundaries. The boundaries are the things that the system has identified as being red. Outside the boundary, turn it red. A manager should be paying attention to it. A person should be paying attention to it, and get the red out. And theoretically, then everything's in good shape, as long as your metrics and things are defined right. You use the tool to do the work.
And what I want to reiterate that Nate said earlier is, one thing at a time here for your reps. So if you don't like all these things that we're talking about are great higher OML behaviors at some point, but if you don't have your opportunities in your tool, start there. Like literally just go to your sales room and say, I expect all opportunities next week, and in the tool, whatever it is. If it's Excel, then it's Excel, but it's in there. And then, after a couple of weeks where they've continued to put their opportunities in the tool, then you go, okay, now it looks like you have them all in 1 month. So let's talk about that. They're not, and then a couple of weeks they kind of get, and then it's like, okay, let's talk about stages, one thing at a time. Because one of the things I've heard from my team is, we jump in and do kind of what we've all done to you today. Here's what great looks like. And then meanwhile, they're like, where do I put an opportunity at?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, probably ought to got that one right first.
Yeah.
And you got to wash, rinse, repeat that for every new team member. I mean, right? Because they come in, but just presuming that they hear the lesson that you teach them the one time and they do it consistently. That's why the one-on-ones are so critical to what Steve was saying.
Yeah. All right. We are coming up on a half an hour. So next time we will go through the last step on this, which is, all right, how do you manage out, right? How do you manage out, and when do you go from like we may be managing out to, yep, we got to get them out. And what do you do? And how do you make that transition and do those sorts of things? So again, smash the subscribe button. We want to get Nate and Steve in the what's the shirt name again? What is
Get
it?
Along. The Get
Get along shirt with the TikTok dancing. And I want to thank Stephanie because I feel like there it is right there. I feel, I'm remote. I'm in that guy's office today, and I feel like my head makes me look like a completely different species than you guys. My head is like 3 times the size of your guys' head. Yeah, there you go, Steve.
Massive.
Right. And I feel like I'm like
Steve is still short, even though his head's big. I don't know
in and out of the thing. So Stephanie, I apologize for that and my big noggin. There we go. See, now I feel a little bit less self-conscious. Smash the subscribe button. We will see you I think next month. We got a lot of travel coming up. We're going on the road, bringing the show on the road, including in Phoenix in December. Looking forward to that. But anyway, any final words, Steve, Nate? What do you got? And we'll let everybody go.
Whatever you do, pick one thing.
Yeah. Take the next step. It's just what's your next step? What's your next step? Take that.
And if you haven't, download the MSP growth kit, which we'll put that link up so you guys can go get that. Gentlemen, thank you. Stephanie, thank you. We will talk to you guys next month.
Take care.